Hey, what's going on, everyone? I am back with another Honest Hour. This time I'm chatting with the one true lib. What's up, man?
Yeah, I'm all right, man.
Yeah, thanks for talking with me today. And we're going to talk about the right wing and the UK and just the current political climate that the Britons are facing. Uh, so I guess I'd like to start with what your opinion on the current state of Brexit is, because it seems like after about what 14 months now, progress has been incredibly slow.
Oh yeah, this was entirely predictable. I mean, we have a prime minister who voted Remain, and we have a cabinet of hers which was also largely pro Remain. She then decided to bring in some of the Brexiteers, which was good, but on the whole, this was entirely foreseeable. I mean, Paul Joseph Watson, he made a video, I think over a year ago, saying they would do this, and we're seeing some people saying, "Oh, well, maybe we should accept the divorce bill. Maybe we should pay the billions they want us to pay. Maybe we should have some freedom of movement just for a few months and then we'll see what goes on." And it's just like hard Brexit is the only way. And people need to understand this.
Do you find it really creepy when they describe Brexit as a divorce? I, I just find that incredibly insidious. Just because it's an international organization or the EU is that's currently trying to become the new USSR, and
Yeah.
I just think I don't know. I just find it really weird that they would describe um, seemingly just an economic arrangement and totally not a political union as a divorce.
Well, I
But
think oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Just saying I think it's mainly because what it is was originally set up to be not only an economic, after World War One and World War Two, Europe had been fighting a lot, and so it was just like, oh well, we'll all trade together, and so there'll be no more wars. Went from simply an economic bloc to, well, we've got to unite every nation under one currency, one anthem, one army, one central bank, and yeah, I mean they're calling it a divorce mainly because I think they're doing that because it's been going on for so long. The EU's been going on for a long time. I mean, we have all these globalist, multinational, or post-national institutions: NATO, the UN, the EU. Is it really necessary? I'm not really a fan of any of them. Free trade, but there has to be some limitations. And the problem is we have just gone so far down this corporatist narrative.
Mm. I'm not so sure that you can really have an economic union without it eventually turning into a political one.
Mm,
Uh, Once you start to get involved in or once you start to get involved in a country's regulations and things like that, it's a real it just tends to be a precursor to further control on the political level. And if you look at the United States, we started off with the Articles of Confederation, which were
mm.
very loose alignment between all the states, and it was generally considered that they were pretty sovereign. But eventually you had the Constitution created, which one of the big drivers for creating the Constitution and getting rid of the Articles of Confederation. One of the arguments was that it would create more economic prosperity because you'd have more, well, trade between the states. Not everyone would be using their own currencies. So, I mean, do you disagree with that? Do you think like an economic union would be beneficial for the United Kingdom if you could just keep away all the political aspects of it?
Well, there are positives and negatives to centralization. So, you know, oh, sorry if you can hear that outside. Um, One of the positives is everyone trades under the same currency, so there's no, conversions fee or anything like that. There's no potential for tariffs. But the negative is that, yeah, if everyone is tied to the same currency now, with the US, you're all in different states, but it's all relatively the same culture, the same, you know, land, language. With the EU, Eastern Europe is still to this day recovering from communism. Southern Europe is very different to Northern Europe and the Scandinavian countries, which is different to Western Europe. So it's less beneficial here than it would be in the US. I can understand why, for example, the dollar was taken up instead of just, you know, some random other currencies. But overall, I mean, it depends on the situation. So for the UK, I would say, again, I'm a supporter of trade between nations. It's just that that tends to come with the caveat of freedom of movement. I'm wholly and utterly against freedom of movement. I mean, some people would even say far right on immigration. Not only do I support closing the border and a moratorium, maybe 20, 30 years, just no immigration at all, but I support even deportations of certain people, certain groups, because things have gotten so out of control. Multiculturalism doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. So how big is the gap between the public's opinion on immigration is and what the current elected leaders are willing to do about it is? Like, how far right is the general public in the UK about immigration, and what are the politicians willing to do to address that? Like, how big's the gap?
Well, on the whole, the UK is not as far right as me. Um, on the whole, though, they are on the right. They are realizing, wait, we can't just have tons of people coming in. They're using our NHS. They're using our schools. They're not paying. They're all these low IQ third worlders who don't know what the hell they're doing. We now have problems with acid attacks and FGM. We wasn't having this 30, 40, 50 years ago. And then people, you bring this up, you know, some Labour politician just today got fired from the Labour Party because she said, oh, we tend to have a problem with Pakistani men raping white girls, because that's what they do. These Muslim gangs, they specifically target white English girls to rape because they see white girls as the, you know, the daughters of the land. And so they are emasculating the white men, saying, oh yeah, we deflowered your precious women. They're ours now. And this is a leftist politician in the Labour Party saying this as well. I mean, this culture of political correctness, and simply you can't say anything, otherwise you're a vicious racist. But on the whole, you know, we saw people, they were getting called racist, so they just, you know, knuckled under. And then when it came time to vote, they voted Brexit. They are right wing. They do on immigration. You know, they do think, well, we need some kind of control. We're seeing all these terrorist attacks in Europe. We don't want to be like that. Luckily enough, Britain wasn't as tied to the EU, for example, as France is. Or, I mean, Germany, you've got the diversity Führer, Angela Merkel, who just wants to rule the Europe with an iron fist. And then you've got, you know, the Eastern European countries are kind of dependent on the EU because of communism and what happened to them. They're really kind of dependent on other people to drag them back up. But overall, you know, the British public, they are supportive of restriction, but the leaders, you know, we had Theresa May after another terrorist attack saying, yeah, we're gonna have to regulate the internet now. And it's just like, no, close the fucking borders and deport these terrorists. Really, you know, start closing the mosques, closing the Sharia courts. It's really not that hard if you wanted to do it.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
punishing or holding the community that responsible for all these actions accountable. It's not what Theresa May seemed to want to do with her whole manifesto is punish everyone else and like just punish everybody equally, you know. But it's not an equal problem. It's specifically this Muslim colony growing in these Muslim colonies that are growing throughout Europe. As their numbers increase, they feel much less inclined to respect the customs and the laws, because why would they? Like, there's no pressure on them to do it, and
No,
They can, rape. How much was it in Rotherham? Like 1,500 over the course.
1,500 different over I think 10 or 15 years. They discovered one in Newcastle recently, Rochdale. It's just all over the place. I mean, there's massive Muslim colonies in Birmingham. East London is, I mean, seriously, at this point, you walk around London and you don't know who is the native population of England. You don't know. You walk around London, you think, well, I can't, I don't, it's just a mix. There's no national identity. There's no unifying cultural identity of Europeans. And this is what really annoys me because of the history of European nationalism, because two complete idiot ideologues, Mussolini and Hitler, ruined it for everyone. Now no one in Europe can be nationalist whatsoever. You got, oh, Le Pen's far right. It's like, no, she's not. She just wants to close the borders. She's a massive leftist on economics. She's pro-choice. She's pro-gay marriage. And Wilders just doesn't like Islam. That's it. You know, you're slightly nationalist. Oh, you basically love the Nazis. It's like, no. But, this is how it is. And plus, when you have an ideology like Islam, it is specifically designed to conquer and make people submit. And then when you have a welfare state which does not incentivize people to integrate, if you had a free market or more, private charities, things like this, stuff I advocate for, because I'm quite far on the right economically as well. If you had no welfare state, people would have to get jobs. They'd have to integrate. But here you can just come in and then everything gets handed to you.
And if they can't integrate, they have to leave. I mean,
oh yeah, I mean, if you can't, I mean, the Raise Act that Trump, pushes in the Australian style immigration system. If you cannot speak English, you are moving to England. If you cannot speak English, just go away. Like, I don't want you to come here. I mean, like I said, I would put a complete moratorium. So I would only have immigration from other European nations, and in some special cases, obviously with Britain we have the Commonwealth because the UK empire. We have to kind of, I guess, apologize for our sins of colonizing all these countries all around the world. So I guess we'd want to keep them in the loop so they could come. Because the Indians and the Jamaicans, they're not really a problem. It's not the Sikhs or the Hindus or any of this. It's specifically Muslims. And so, I mean, I would completely ban no more immigration from Africa, no more from the Middle East. It would just be Europe and the Commonwealth, along with maybe, some of the Asian nations, because they tend to integrate pretty well.
How powerful is the Nazi accusation just for the average British person? It's just kind of hard for me to gauge it, just because I only ever interact with British people. I don't know if in their everyday life, if it still kind of freezes people up and they just gotta submit to whatever any given leftist would want.
Well, I mean, you saw when there was a poster that Nigel Farage stood in front of, and it was a line of migrants walking in it. It was like a curved line, and they said that was something that the Nazis did to talk about the Jews or something, or the Slavs. It was one of them too. So there's a strong. I mean, it's more so in Europe than America. With America, you have to kind of deal with the Klan, and idiots like David Duke. Anytime this guy attaches himself to something, it's ruined. And anytime they drag Duke out, it's only for his tweets, and they just want to say, "Oh, look at Trump; he's getting support from Duke." I mean, here we have. I think we had a Labour Party member, or he used to be the mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, and he said that Hitler was a Zionist, and he got massive heat for that. I mean, you see what happens to Tommy Robinson. He gets accused of being a racist all the time, and it's I mean, we had our police force, girls in Rotherham. I said that wrong. Sorry. Girls in Rotherham were being raped, and this isn't You know, these aren't grown women, even though that's terrible as well. But, you know, 8-year-old, 7-year-old girls, 9-year-old girls. I mean, could you imagine being raped for years and years and years? The police force knew about it and they did nothing because they were afraid of being called racist.
Could you imagine if your dad tried to save you and he got arrested? Like,
I know. I mean, that actually happened as well.
I know.
I mean, but this insanity isn't just in England. I believe I still cannot get this out of my mind to this day. I think it was either a German or a Swedish. I think it's a German Green MP member. She was raped by a migrant, Muslim migrant, and she lied to the police and said it was a white German man to prevent people from becoming racist.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think I read about that a while ago.
These people are just so, and I don't understand this. I mean, I don't want to go all conspiracy on everyone, but it's pretty obvious they want one world, and whether one world government, one currency, one culture, and to some extent one race. And which people are easier to? Well, it's not even which people are easier. It's if you get one people out the way, it's going to be easier to rule. Because if you look at South America, the Hispanic people can't form governments. They're super corrupt. You look at Venezuela, Brazil, Africa. I mean, there's not really much there. There's working governments in some places, but you've just seen in Kenya there's a big riot about the election. The East Asians, they're very collectivist. They're very they're actually quite ethno-nationalist, quite xenophobic, and not all of them obviously, but their policies are very I guess the alt-right of the East Asians. And so they're all very collectivist, really less individualist, less small government. It's only really white people that tend to be pro small government. And so it just tends to be only Western nations that are getting flooded with these migrants. And we know that whites tend to vote conservative and right-wing, and they tend to be more nationalist. And so that's I mean, I'm not like spouting off all white genocide and it's an international Jewish conspiracy. I'm not one of those people, but it's pretty evident that there are a lot of movements that are explicitly anti-white and just anti-Western in nature. All this postmodernist, neo-Marxist garbage,
Yeah, my I do think that something. I do think that there is a white genocide when you get to like the bottom line. My quibble has just always been that using the word genocide, it just tends to invoke the wrong images. I mean, when you say someone's getting genocided, you think, hatchets and chainsaws or shit like that, like people going through villages and mowing people down. But I think it's more accurately described as just white people are being colonized, that foreign groups are being imported, and these foreign groups are gradually taking control of the state because they practice a lot of in-group preferences and their own form of ethno-nationalism. But obviously, any kind of expression of self-interest is just complete non-starter in pretty much every Western country for white people. And are you familiar with Rocking Mystery at all?
I have seen him. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. He's. I just mentioned it because he's come to a similar observation that you have. Because that if you want to have, if you genuinely want larger and larger government, and you do want to instill some sort of world order, white people are kind of in your way. They're the ones who most likely, on the whole, obviously not every single person, but just as a general trend, they're the ones who are going to oppose it the strongest. And
yeah,
if you can push them out of the halls of power in their own country, then the lion's share of the work's already all finished.
I mean, we have a Muslim mayor of London, and one of the first things he did was ban the Beachbody Ready adverts, if you've seen them. And he teamed up with the feminists saying, oh yeah, we need to stop this. objectification of girls and women, and we need to promote realistic body types. And I'm just sitting and going, okay, I hate that phrase, because if she has that body, it is realistic. It is obtainable if she has it. But it's not about you standing with feminists and trying to promote no objectification of women. I know exactly why you're doing this. It's the alignment of the feminists and the Islamists. It's, oh, well, I prefer her in a burqa instead, but we'll just say this instead. I mean, Sadiq Khan has been caught supporting various Islamist groups. He has spoken in front of an Islamic conference where, the women were made to stand in the back. And I'm not one of these, oh, save the women, kind of, gynocentrists. But it's evident that now that we have a Muslim mayor, London to me just seems like, I don't want to go all black-pilled, but London just seems it's in a bad place. There's so much. It's painfully diverse. It's so diverse you can't even believe it.
Yeah. Just a quick anecdote, because my a cousin of mine actually visited London recently, and she is just one of the most obnoxiously liberal people you can ever imagine.
No, yeah, one of those.
She's also a real fan of like European culture and things like that. So when she got to London, she certainly called. She talked to me after a day there, and she was just like, all that stuff you said about immigration. Could you show me those links to all those studies again? It's like all the arguments I had thrown at her just never stuck, because she just thought I was being, I don't know, extremist or whatever. But actually seeing it for herself, that's what changed her mind. Do you think that, specifically in regards to the Muslim issue, do you think there's I know this sounds kind of maybe a little sick, but is there a benefit to the jihadist attacks, if in only that it gets people paying attention to the issue?
Well, in a kind of, if you want to use that word, sick way, yes, but no. Because how many is it going to take? How many attacks did France need? And they still went with Macron. I mean, Macron is just the most spineless, pathetic cock of a man. He married some woman that's old enough to be his mother, and he has no children, no investment in the future. Our prime minister has no children. I mean, that's not her fault. I think she was just she had some, she was born that way or something. It's not like Merkel, who chose not to have them by choice, because she feeds on the blood of children. But yeah, I mean, it's been attack after attack after attack, and people just, I sense it when I speak to people. They are going, well, I don't want to be racist, but we do have, there are lots of attacks, and I don't know what to do. I don't want to be racist. I don't want to call them out, but I just want to say, and it's just like, and I just say to these people, but have you actually read the Quran? Do you know that what they're doing is part of Islam? And do you know that this is the goal of Islam? There are, the goal of Islam is to out us from our own communities and subjugate us under their rule. And at this point, I've seen Majid Nawaz and all these other people saying, oh yeah, we need to reform Islam and we need to have more liberal secular values. I'm just like, oh, okay. The Quran wasn't designed that way. It was designed to be, originally Muhammad was peaceful, but then guess what? He became more of a majority. The Muslims grew in number, and they became violent. I mean, you're seeing, look at the history of India. Why does Pakistan exist? Because of Muslim violence. Why is Sudan now 2 countries, North and South? Muslim violence. Everywhere they go, they do this. Everywhere they go. And so, my position is simple. It's hard. and it's gonna probably result in some people getting split up and hurt. But it's simply close the mosques, stop promoting the Quran, ban the sale of it. I mean, this is the thing. I used to be a libertarian, but I've come to realize that I still, in my heart, am a libertarian. But I realize that some degree of authoritarianism, not fascism, but authoritarianism, is required to solve the problem, and we need to get these Muslims out. And I just don't see a way for us to cohabitate, because at the end of the day, people say, "Oh, but you know, there are all these peaceful ones, and not all of them are committing attacks." But what are they doing to our cities? I walk around and I see halal shops, mosques everywhere. I'm hearing Arabics. I'm seeing women in hijabs and burqas. It's disgusting. I feel physically sick when I see that vile piece of clothing. And it's just, this is not my country. England is not a country for Muslims. It is a country for the English, where English culture will thrive, and only English culture will thrive. And if you want to come here, you will assimilate, and there is no negotiation. But that's a racist position to some.
Yeah, I think I'm very similar to you in that in my ideal world, I'm still the Ron Paul libertarian, you know, but
Yeah, same.
I think there's a lot of us libertarians on the right who've one way or another come to realize that only certain cultures can support
Yeah.
and maintain libertarianism. And just so utilizing, I guess, the state to make sure that some cultures can't intrude on our countries.
Mm.
It's been a really bitter pill to swallow. Like I've just
I know, like I've been
so it's just cringy using it, you know, like ugh, I hate forcing
yeah.
people to do things, but if I don't force them to do this, they'll never respect, you know, my rights at all. Like I have to go now or they're gonna, you know, compel me to, or maybe not even me, just or compel my children, you know, to become Muslim or live as second class citizens, you know, if the demographic trends keep going as they are.
Well, yeah, I mean, in I think in the UK, I think British people are, and I'm not just saying white here. I'm talking just British in general. I think it's 1.7 children. What white British is, I think 1.3, but British in general is 1.7. But Muslims are over 3, and that is not something that's good, because people say, "Oh no, that's so racist, that's so bigoted." My question to them is, look at every single majority Muslim country, every single one. Would you want to live there? And there's a simple answer to that. And if you know that, then you have to prevent them from becoming a majority. And you do that, unfortunately, through some. I mean, you try not to be, you know, psychopathic in it, but you just want to. It's really about preservation. It's about survival. It's not about hate. You know, because if you want to be Muslim, that's cool. Go to Syria. Go to, well, not right now, obviously, but go to Iran, Saudi Arabia. Go to Pakistan. Go over there. You know, that's where they are. Just don't come here. I think that's true diversity. You know, if you can see lots of different cultures all around the world instead of forcing them into this one blob. And obviously, and I've been watching some of the more based libertarians, not the more, you know, cucked ones. You know, Reason TV has gone a lot more cucked nowadays. You know, but I watch you know, that guy T, Stick, Sex, and Hammer, and they're pretty, you know, I guess woke, if you want to use that word, on the issues. And I've come to realize that some people cannot coexist really very well together. Um, if you've seen Hans Hermann Hoppe and what he advocated for, physical removal of people promoting degenerate viewpoints and lifestyles, and then obviously what Pinochet in Chile did to the communists. Now, the problem with Pinochet is he just accused anyone on the left of being a communist. Obviously, that's not true. But I do support physical removal of communists. You know, Antifa, if I was President Trump, I'd be like, yeah, anyone wearing black bloc, yeah, you're getting arrested. The oppression of communists and the oppression of the progressive left, the social justice warriors, whatever people want to call them, is necessary. They are very damaging. You know, feminism is extremely damaging. Multiculturalism is extremely damaging. When they say diversity, it really just means less white people at this point. It's pretty fucking obvious. And this ideology of social justice is so cancerous, and it is just so damaging that I can see why America is becoming so polarized, especially with the events in Charlottesville. And I, of course, condemn what happened there. But I do think some degree of force is inevitable, because I just don't believe we can coexist with certain groups, whether it be, Muslims or communist socialists. These people are just a bit of a problem. And I understand people would say that's kind of a fascist position. I mean, if you've done the 8 values test on online, there's 8 values, there's political compass, things like that. I come out as authoritarian right, and I used to not be, but I just like you said before, like, you know, the pill of swallowing, realizing something needs to be done and something drastic needs to be done, and once things get done, the ground is there and it's fertile for a libertarian society to grow. But yeah.
Were you ever a member of UKIP, or just voted for them? Like,
no, I'm not a member of UKIP. I voted for them begrudgingly, even though it was a waste of time, because where I live is a Labour stronghold. The problem with UKIP is they are starting to act like the John McCains and the Mitt Romneys. I mean, if you saw, you know, all these tweets from conservative Republicans, oh, Trump, how dare you not condemn the white nationalists? He did. He said he condemns violence on all sides, but apparently that means you support Nazis. And I saw, if you've seen the videos of Tommy Robinson, and he's been standing with this woman called Anne-Marie Waters, and she is a big person in Sharia Watch UK.
Yeah.
And some guy in UKIP stood down and he was saying, oh no, this woman's racist, how dare she do this? And I've seen UKIP, they're like, oh yeah, look how multicultural we are, look how great we are. You know, we've got Muslims in our party, we've got Jews in our party, we've got all people of all races in our party. And it's just like, first of all, that's not the position that UKIP should push. Second of all, it doesn't matter. It's like I say to, when I was talking about the alt-right, alt-light hit piece that the ADL did, people like Gavin McInnes and people like Paul Joseph Watson, they'll say, oh, no, I'm not a Nazi. You know, UKIP says, oh, no, we're not a racist party. Well, they call you that anyway. So I'm not saying be explicitly racist or even implicitly racist, but just don't apologize. And even Nigel Farage, and I'm a huge fan of him, he was saying that if UKIP becomes an anti-Islam party, it's finished. I don't think it is. I think that's the direction UKIP needs to go. They need to go really nationalist. Unfortunately, the problem with nationalism is, and even though I am a very hardcore nationalist, it does inevitably bring about some more populist left-wing economics. And I'm not a fan of left-wing economics really that much. You know, I come out quite far to the right on economics. I don't believe in socialized medicine. I don't believe in high taxes. I believe in a flat tax, low regulations, things like that. And that's what UKIP used to be, but then people bullied them and says, "Oh, you want to take away the NHS?" So they then just said, "Oh, no, 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 we want to keep the NHS. We're fans of it," things like that. And really, at this point, going against the NHS is an unwinnable position. So it's just it's a waste of time. So yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, UKIP has potential, but after Brexit, I think it's frustrating because as a right winger, there is no party in England that is actually good, that I have faith in. The left has Jeremy Corbyn, who's just an open Marxist. I mean, this guy will plunge our country into Venezuela. It'll be a disaster. The right has no one and no party. And Farage would come back and the Conservatives would let him in. I could see there being something there. There's this guy, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's got quite a funny cult following on Twitter. He's like a guy in the Conservative Party who was a Brexiteer. Yeah, I've seen a few of his retweets. He's got it's called Mogmentum. It's quite funny. And yeah, I like the guy. Problem is he is very posh, and people will look at him and go, "Oh yeah, he's an upper class guy." Plus he's white and male, so he's automatically Satan to anyone who's progressive. So yeah, it's the state of the right wing in Britain is, and this is all the Tories' fault. The Conservatives they're not conserving anything. I hate them. They are doing a shambolic job of actually promoting conservatism the way it's meant to be. So UKIP could have been another option, but they've just fallen away.
Do you think if Nigel Farage hadn't stepped out of politics and stayed on with UKIP after Brexit, do you think he would have been a positive force for that party, or is it more just like you said, even he's not really willing to just come out and be anti-Islam or anti-multiculturalism? He still really dances on the fence. So do you think it would have been pointless? Was UKIP doomed from
the start? UKIP was never doomed from the start. I just think that they've made some wrong moves. Farage really doesn't want to be called racist. A lot of these UKIP guys, they are desperately afraid of being called racist because, Britain, we didn't have a KKK, we didn't have a Nazi movement, but we did have a little upstart fascist movement, Oswald Mosley. And there were people who were sympathetic to the Nazis in Germany. But our history of racism is really, it's less pronounced. Obviously, there was the British Empire, and then we had Indians and people from the Caribbean come over, as like a apology for colonizing them. We allowed some of them to immigrate over here as well as they fought with us in World War II. So that was another way to say, thank you. So come over to Britain and get some of our, integrate with us and build a life. So racism, it's been a thing for every race, not just whites. I mean, it seems to me like whites are the only ones that get, beaten over the head with it. But, UKIP did have potential. Farage, if he came back, really, UKIP will never, I don't think, win. The two-party system is very much alive and well. The goal of UKIP, much like the goal of, someone like Geert Wilders in Holland, is to simply drag the mainstream party, the mainstream right-wing party further to the right. So if we had a strong UKIP, the Tories would have to take more right-wing positions, but now they can just say, oh yeah, we're in the center, look at this crazy communist, and we're center right, we're great. And it's like, well, no, you're not great because you didn't win the last election. People went to Jeremy Corbyn despite him being an open socialist, despite the shadow chancellor. And the chancellor is someone who in Britain is the guy who sets out the economic policy. And John McDonnell is an open Marxist. He openly celebrates Marxism. We have another woman in the Labour Party, Diane Abbott, who said Mao did some things right and some things wrong. I mean, this isn't even a joke, you know, and the Tories couldn't even beat them. So, you know, UKIP would have been good for that, you know, dragging the Tories further to the right. But again, there's no one. We've got another election in 5 years, so hopefully someone turns up.
Do you think I keep meaning to read more about Corbyn, but I keep putting it off. Does Corbyn have a lot of support in like more working class areas of the country, or is it because it just seems like it's trans species college students mostly, just based on what I've like seen. Like I don't think.
Okay, the thing, yeah, with Jeremy Corbyn, it's of the people that vote in political elections, there's the people that have always voted Labour or Conservative, or in America, yeah, I'm sure you have family members that have always voted Democrat or Republican and will never change.
Yep.
So there's those people. Then you have the people who were now there are these college people, and you know, we see them in America, we see them here. We see them here. I've yet to meet an actual proper working class person that supports Jeremy Corbyn. They do exist though. The problem is people time after time after time believe that socialism is going to work, and it doesn't matter how many times it fails. It's always not real socialism. And I mean, this is just crazy to me. These young people that go to college, have they ever read a history book? Like, are they completely unaware? It baffles the mind.
Well, the only things read were things approved by their professors. A lot of them who are actually either Marxist leaning or sympathetic or just, you know, Marxist themselves. It's about.
I mean, this is a controversial position, but I've said this before to people. But socialism can only work when it's national socialism. You can't have. And when I say that, I mean,
I know.
You can't have a wealth redistribution state with multiple ethnic groups, because we know about the differences between the ethnic groups, how some more intelligent, you know, average IQ, all that stuff. And when you have a distribution state, you have one group doing better, the other group doing worse, and that group benefits more because they get more welfare disproportionately distributed to them. And then, despite that, the Marxist kind of, I mean, Stefan Molyneux calls them like the Iagos whispering in their ear. I mean, how can you call the American government white supremacist when for decades it has given bundles of money to black communities through welfare? I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. And so you can't have, if you want multiracial, multicultural societies, you need no welfare state. And I'm not even a supporter of multiculturalism. I mean, multiracial states can work only with only with no welfare state, though, because where the minorities are forced economically to integrate, to get jobs, to work, things like that. Because otherwise, they can just take the benefits and sit and not do anything.
Yeah, I think people are more willing to share a country if they don't have to share their neighborhoods. You know, because there is a tendency for people to obviously naturally want to segregate, you know, be around people that are similar to them, that think similarly to them. And I just, you know, are you familiar with Barry Goldwater at all?
Yeah, that was that was the guy that ran against what's his name? Was it JFK? Yeah, I think he ran against JFK.
If I recall correctly, it was Lyndon Johnson.
Lyndon. Sorry, yeah, Lyndon Johnson. My bad. JFK was someone else. Yeah, I got it wrong. I mixed up. But yeah, Barry Goldwater was against I think because there was segregation policies, and
Yeah.
Barry was saying no, that would violate states' rights. Some states should have the right to do it. I believe.
Yeah, he was arguing against forced integration policies, and
Yeah.
his argument was that it would just create a huge incentive. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but his argument was that it would create a huge incentive for racial differences and cultural differences to constantly be reinforced.
Mm.
And it's just forcing integration is just it's an incredible way of getting control over people's daily personal lives. You don't even really need laws to do it a lot of the time. If you can just get everyone so afraid of getting called racist because that minority over there is just really sensitive. You don't.
Well, when you say everyone, it's really just
White.
whites. Yeah.
Should be more specific. But you don't have to pass a law forbidding, violating freedom of speech. They'll censor their own speech because it's socially taboo. So yeah, so I just wish instead of, because I don't support forcibly separating people either against their will. I'm very multiracial, multicultural in my own social life, so no one has the right to tell me not to. But I just wish instead we had gone in the direction of allowing people to self-segregate, and allowing people to mingle, and not creating such a stigma for white people, really, who just don't want to interact with people of different races. I'm not saying it's a nice thing. It's probably not. No, it isn't fair to everybody, but forcing people to take part in something that they don't want to do is just going to create resentment. And
yeah, because I am opposed to, and this is still the libertarian within me. Despite how more shriveled up and weak it's become, I've become more. I don't even know what to describe it. It's not fascist, but I don't know. Just more, like I said, sympathetic to some degree of authoritarianism. But I am opposed to. I was opposed to Jim Crow and apartheid and things like that, not because people say, "Oh, it's so racist, it's so bigoted and mean." It's like, okay, you can make that argument, and yes, to some extent, yes, it was. But the main reason is because it violates freedom of association.
mm-hmm.
People, if they, if a Indian wants to be with a Mexican, and a white person wants to be with a black person, they should be allowed to do that. But just as forcing everyone apart is wrong, forcing everyone together also violates freedom of association. You need to have complete freedom where, some schools would be white only, some would be black only, some would be, Hispanic only if you wanted that. Now, the more alt-right types would go, oh, no, that's terrible. But people, as long as they're not doing anything terrible, and the problem is that I feel the system itself needs to be restructured. I think democracy has kind of failed in the way it's been done. I watch some, more MGTOW guys, more MR, they're more the hard bend on the MRA spectrum. And one of them I watched specifically says, the problem started when women started voting. Now, when it comes to, discussing about feminism, I mean, I'm virulently anti-feminist. All the waves were bad. And the problem isn't women voting. The problem isn't, as the alt-right puts it, the non-whites and the Jews voting. The problem is that voting. The problem is too many people vote. Some people shouldn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just all blacks shouldn't vote or all, Jews or whatever. It's too many people without proper skin in the game are voting. I don't want a single mother who's had 5 kids by 5 men voting, because what's she going to vote for? High taxes, high regulations, welfare state. So no, we're going to take her right to vote away. But if she's a married woman with a devoted husband and 3 children, and she works, you know, because I mean, I would personally restructure democracy to where you could only vote if you're a citizen, and obviously you could change what citizen means. I think in Spartan times it was 3rd generation. So if you are, I guess, ethnically American, which would be white, you would be automatic citizen. But if you're non-white, you'd have to be 3rd generation in order to qualify as a citizen. Then you would have, if you work, that way you're paying taxes, so you're invested in how taxation is spent. You could vote. And I've kind of changed my position as well on military service. I think it's important for not only understanding what war entails, but instilling discipline and a sense of patriotism in the youth, especially who the youth of today are in desperate need, especially millennials, Generation Z. Hopefully, I've seen signs, I've seen articles, they're more conservative, things like that. But I would also extend the vote only to people who've done military service. So in this way, you would restrict, and it wouldn't be saying, oh, all these groups couldn't vote. It's like, no, everyone can vote. You just have to do these things to get the vote, because rights should be earned, not just bestowed upon you. The only thing you have is the right to life and, you know, free speech, Second Amendment, things like that. But the Second Amendment doesn't give you a gun. It gives you the right to own a gun. And so you should earn the right to vote, in my opinion, because some people shouldn't vote. And democracy itself has, especially with this, you know, welfare state and the multicultural, multiracial aspect of many European countries, we're seeing governments and politicians are just buying voting blocks with, you know, wedge issues and just welfare that's going to be paid off by, you know, 4 generations from now, so they don't care if the money doesn't exist. You know?
Yeah, this is something that's really hit home with me recently. Just all of the incentives to having a stable and prosperous society are not present in liberal democracy. You know, politicians are just incentivized to kick the can down the road until they get out of office.
Yeah, they've been doing this for decades. Look at the U.S. debt. Look at the debt around the world.
Yeah, it's
this economic system we have, Keynesian economics, which is, you know, debt-based currency, warfare, welfare state. You know, print money out of nothing. It's garbage. Yeah.
So, are you familiar with the reactosphere at all, or the neo-reactionary movement?
I am. I do watch. I watch a. Well, I mean, I'm pretty much. I'm quite open. So I watch some leftist channels. I watch, you know, the Young Turks when I can stomach it. But I also watch, you know, just normie conservatives like Steven Crowder and Mark Dice. But I watch some libertarians, you know. But I also watch MRAs, MGTOWs, alt-right channels. And I watch, yeah, I've seen some neo-reactionaries.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't consider myself part of their movement. I've only been just exposed to their arguments, and I was just curious if you're familiar with them. But I actually I have to get going actually, so I sorry to kind of cut you off a bit abruptly there. But thanks a lot for talking to me. I really do appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Check the links down below. I'll have a link to the One True Lib's Twitter account and his YouTube page and his Patreon. Throw him some shekels if you liked what he heard. And thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.
See ya.